Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dr. Mary Meduna Gross, and today is day one of the series on becoming a confident leader. Thank you so much for being here today. As we are doing this the first time, I want to make sure I'm set up properly. It looks like we are. So let's just jump into this. Becoming a confident leader. You might be wondering, if you're cruising by here, why would you want to stop and tune in and listen to this? What does this have to do with you? How does this apply to you, to your success, and to your quality of life? Do you already see yourself as a confident leader? And I would ask you, it's just between you and me right here, right now. Just tune into your heart a little bit. Are you confident on the inside? Do you have that security, that sense of grace on the inside, regardless of what's happening on the outside? Or is your confidence more of a, this is who I am, this is my facade, I'm doing confident things? There's no right, there's no wrong, there's no judgment here. But if you're like a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with, you're probably struggling with a lot of things. And you might be wondering, what does this have to do with becoming a confident leader? But hang in there with me for a minute. So if you're like a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know and that I've worked with, one of the things that you want is a work-life balance, because you know that work is not a sustainable strategy. And yet you're not exactly sure what else to do instead. Because if you did, you'd be doing that already. Or maybe your experience is that you have this inner voice that is just nagging you to death. You need a vacation, not from your work or from what's your life. You just need a vacation from this voice in your head. Maybe that's you. Or maybe you feel like you're alone, right? The people around you, whether it's at work or at home, just don't seem to know how to support you. And sometimes those relationships feel like extra work. Maybe you thought you'd be hitting a groove by now, right? Maybe you thought things would be much more predictable, not so rigid and routine that it would be boring, but more grounded and secure, knowing that, you're making a difference and that you've got things working for you. They're moving in the right direction. But here's what I want you to know. Regardless of how challenges show up for you, whether it's mental challenges, maybe you overthink a lot, maybe you always feel like you're in a hurry, or there's always something else that you've got to do. You just, again, that inner chatter, you're wearing yourself out. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe there's anxiety, you must have forgotten something, or it's never enough, and you got to do one more thing. Or maybe your experience is more on the other end, and maybe it's more depressive, and maybe you don't feel like you have the energy to do what you even want to do, let alone the things that need to be done. Or maybe your challenges are physical. Maybe you have some chronic physical symptoms that just keep showing up, whether it's just pain or you've got a chronic autoimmune condition that just somehow shows up at the least appropriate times. When is there a good time, right? So yes, all of these are rooted in a chronically overstressed nervous system. Now you might be saying, thank you, Dr. Obvious. We all have chronically overstressed nervous systems. And that would be true. In fact, I would even go so far as to say, I think that we've been conditioned to live with a chronically overstressed nervous system. In fact, one of the, I just lost my train of thought. Yes, we all have this chronically overstressed nervous system, and the conditioning. This is where I was going. What I was thinking about this weekend is just in some of our casual conversations I was having with friends and family, it occurred to me sometimes that we use our complaints, our struggles, as a way to connect with people, right? And if I literally heard myself ask myself this question during a conversation, if I didn't have something to complain about, what would I talk about here? right? And so you maybe you find yourself surrounded by other people who are also always complaining about something because if you're not upset about it, it might mean that you don't care enough about it. Or if you're not upset, it just means that maybe you're not trying hard enough. And so we share our stories of this chronically overstressed nervous system as evidence of how much work we're putting in. Tell me that we're not conditioned to live like this. Now, Einstein also reminds us that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Right? So, if we are going to solve these issues of our chronically overstressed nervous system, we can't do that from the viewpoint of a chronically overstressed nervous system. So, how do we break out of this? What do you do? Do you have strategies to break out of this, or do you just kind of push through, telling yourself that you're going to slow down, you'll relax when you've hit your goals? In fact, I literally just got off a call with a networking partner who was also saying describing this, how do I say this norm for entrepreneurs, that I'll deal with my mental health and well-being when I hit my profit, or when my business gets going, or when it hits the goals that I want it to. Is that your strategy? Or are you willing to reset this chronically overstressed nervous system so that you can now realign with that higher version of yourself, that higher soul version of yourself that is always there? Side note, one of the things that stressed me the most when I was moving into this space of personal development and coaching is this idea that we're all whole, complete, and perfect on the inside. And I was not feeling whole, complete, or perfect at all on the inside. And that felt like a lie to me, until I realized that, yes, there is always a part of me, that spiritual part of me, that soul part of me, that is always whole, complete, and perfect. It's the ego part of me, this nervous system part of me, that gets in the way. So, are you willing to align with that soul part of you? And if you are, I encourage you to type reset in the comments now and celebrate like other people who are also saying reset, because the more that we reinforce one another for this idea that we no longer need to sacrifice ourselves in order to achieve the results that we want, we're going to stay stuck in this habit of conditioning. And so, if you're ready to say, I'm going to hit reset on this, no, now this doesn't even have to mean that you have any idea of what you're saying yes to or what's coming next. And that might make your nervous system say, that's a little freaky to me. But trust that soul part of you. Trust that soul part of you that is saying, yes, now is the time. Put reset in the comments below. Because this is why you are here today. Because you're tired of sacrificing yourself. And yet you just don't know how to be any other way. And I'm here to help you reset your nervous system so that you can experience elevated energy, elevated joy, and satisfaction of your accomplishments along the way. This isn't something that we wait for. There's no need to wait for this. You can work on your business, you can grow your business, and work on your confidence at the same time. In fact, I would argue that when you start with yourself and you work on these areas first, that business part is going to be simple to you. One of my friends, we were several months ago, and she was breaking through this piece, and she said, all of a sudden everything's just coming easy for me. And I said, it sounds like it. And I repeated back to her, so it's never been so easy. And she heard that. And she said, it's just never been so easy. So that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you. So that's what this series is about becoming this confident leader. And so, again, I'm going to ask you just to take a few minutes to think about how confident you are in your skin right now. So I've got 5 statements here that I'm just going to read for you. And as I do, I want you to think about kind of rating yourself. 1 as this is completely false for me, or 10, this is completely true to me. So, right, you can either have a low score of 5 or a high score of 10. So the first statement is, I want you to just, if you can, close your eyes and just tune into this. I am on edge most of the time. Is that one? Is it mostly false, completely false? Or is it 10? That's completely true for me. That I am on edge most of the time. Statement two, I lack mental clarity or have this feeling of brain fog. Is that number one, completely false, or 10, completely true? I have a lack of clarity or mental brain fog. Number three, I have decision fatigue. I am so tired of making decisions, and it feels like the decisions are getting more complex rather than simpler. One is that's completely false for me. 10, that is completely true for me. Or as we mentioned earlier, maybe you feel like you're alone. Maybe you feel like your colleagues in your family or your closest circle doesn't quite know what to do for you or how to support you. And maybe they feel dependent on you. This is false. One is completely false for me. 10, completely true. I feel alone. And number five, I must be doing something wrong. It shouldn't be this hard. This is one is completely false. 10 is completely true. So think about that. Add up those scores mentally in your head. Are you on the low end of the scale? This is completely false for me, meaning you're doing well. Or is your score on the high end of the scale, meaning a lot of these are true for you? Then you have a chronically overstressed nervous system, and I have the tools to help you break through that. And that is why we are here today. So first of all, let's dive into this. The first thing I want to tell you is that you haven't done anything wrong. As I mentioned before, there's conditioning involved here. And you have learned, you learn probably better and quicker than most people that you know. And one of the things that you're really good at learning is what is the problem here? What is the desired outcomes? What are the expectations? What are the rules that we're playing with here? So that you can then come up with a solution, a creative solution that takes all of those variables into consideration. You're good at that. And in fact, I'm guessing that part of you is saying to yourself, yeah, again, Dr. Obvious, that is what a leader does. And yet, this is also how we keep ourselves in that conditioned state of chronically overstressed. So what's missing here isn't that you've done anything wrong. What's missing is that you lack a clear understanding of how you operate. You've learned from other people who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and you've bought into a lot of these stories. And again, you excel at identifying problems, finding solutions, except when it comes to your own experience. Because here it feels like things are happening to you. Because when it's you lack that objectivity that you have when you are identifying and solving problems outside of you. And you're so good at problem solving that you just naturally, again, use your knowledge, your experience, and the strategies to really control what the outcome, right? Again, isn't that what leaders are supposed to do? We're supposed to put these controls into place and make sure that people are accountable to their responsibilities. And there's yes to all of that, but there's also how are we compromising ourselves in the process when we're trying to control other people, other events that we really don't have any control over? What is that doing to us? There's a better way. And we're not going to get to it in this series, but there is a better way. And what we're talking about in this series is the first step towards that better way. Now, all of this comes down to the fact that I've walked all of this. I've been through this whole experience myself. I knew at a very young age that I wanted nothing more than to be an impactful leader. I wanted the people that I was leading to expand and to exceed their own expectations, so that when we come together, the things that we would do together would exceed all of our expectations. That's what I, that's the vision, that's the leader that I wanted to be. And so I thought there were two things that I needed to do to become this leader. I needed to know it, so I needed to study it, which is why I pursued my doctorate in leadership. And I also needed to practice it, which meant that I was always looking for leadership roles and opportunities. Starting as soon as I graduated from high school, I joined the Navy. And in the Navy is really where I started to find opportunities to practice leadership. And it just felt so natural to me. And I was in a state of learning. And so I would seek more opportunities. And um, started my career in public education as a special educator, and moved into administrative roles. So let's fast forward 20 years on this path of I need to know it and I need to practice it, and that will create the outcome that I'm looking for. So one day my superintendent pulls me in and says, "Mary, you're doing the right things. If I were in your shoes, I would be doing exactly what you're doing. But what you're doing is not working. So you have to figure this out, or you have to go." Now, this was after 20 years of pursuing this path of knowing and practicing. And do I know enough? Am I good enough? Am I practicing enough? And what he's telling me is, you're doing the right things. I would be doing it too. So when I went back to my desk, to my office after this very challenging conversation, two shifts happened for me. The first one was that I finally asked myself, "Mary, how are you contributing to what's happening here? The challenges that we're facing." I didn't expect an answer, but I got one. And the answer that I got was the Johari window. You don't have to know anything about the Johari window. Just know that there's part of you that you know and everybody else does too. But there's also part of you that you don't know and no one else does either. And so when that came up as my question to the answer of, as the answer to the question of how am I contributing? Well, the way that I'm contributing is coming out of this unknown quadrant. I thought, oh my gosh, my superintendent wants me to be successful. He doesn't know either. And the first thing that popped in my head is, I wish I had a coach, because it occurred to me in that moment that a coach could help me uncover what's in this unknown quadrant. And this was about 10 years ago, and coaching wasn't what it is now. And I decided then, like, I've got to become that coach. That's who I want to become, because I can't be the only leader who thought that knowledge and practice was going to result in becoming the leader that we wanted to be. I'm going to find out what this unknown quadrant is all about. I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to become the coach that I wish that I'd had. So that's the first thing. So I'm kind of surprisingly in this very effervescent, like, moving forward. This is the shift. This was that I needed to move forward. And on the other hand, I'm also giving myself permission to finally feel that exhaustion of 20 years of pushing through, 20 years of compromising relationships, of compromising health, just compromising my own well-being. And for me, what that means is I just felt miserable all the time. Nothing brought joy to me anymore. And here I was paying this hefty price because I believe in the outcome, but I wasn't even getting to the outcome. So that and with this insight to become the coach that I wish I had, that is then what set me off on this path to become the coach. And now, having been able to coach individuals for 10 years, for me being able to grow for the next 10 years, this series on becoming a confident leader really resonates with me, and I hope it's resonating with you. And once again, we're talking about resetting that nervous system. And if you're ready to reset that nervous system, hit reset in the comments. Let's build some energy around this and reinforce one another for being willing to take this step. Because once again, Nobody's done anything wrong. We have done our best right up into this moment, but we're in this moment that says what I'm doing isn't going to get me where I'm going, right? What got me here isn't going to get me there. And so we need to hit that reset again, because you know that self-sacrificing yourself is compromising your nervous system, and ultimately it's not going to get you where you want to go anyway. You know this isn't sustainable. And so are you going to keep telling yourself, well, I'm going to kick this down the road until X, Y, and Z happens? Or are you going to say, today's the day? Today's the day. Today is the day that I hit this reset on this nervous system. I trust that I have the resources and the support around me to do that. Now, tomorrow in this conversation, we're going to dive right into the inner chatter. Today was really about setting up, why are we talking about this? And what does it mean to be confident? And what's really at the core of what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And I hope that what you heard me say is the problem we're trying to solve is this overstimulated nervous system. And the strategy of self-awareness that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this week is one way to move into and start to reset that nervous system. So come back tomorrow when we're going to talk about that inner chatter, how to relate to it in a healthy and loving way instead of trying to get away from it. As we close today, I just want to remind you that this is one of those things you can't delegate out. You can't leverage out leadership. You can't leverage out your own mental health. You can't leverage out your well-being. This is something that only you can do for you. But it's also true you can't do it alone. And so I would encourage you to either lean into those networks that are already present for you and are willing to hold you and to hold space for you. And if you don't already have that community, then find a community. Start talking about people. Where are they going? What are their communities? And once again, hit reset. Hit reset in the comments below. Declare that for yourself, because simply declaring that for yourself is unconsciously telling yourself, oh, this is a new solution. This is a new thing I want to explore. And you are now going to be more primed to find those resources. So the first resource is right at your feet. We're coming back here tomorrow to talk about the inner chatter. Thanks again for being with me here today.